Legacy autos have spent decades building brand, history, prestige, and class. There is value in the goodwill that has been invested into these brands. Value that clearly we are seeing consumers are willing to pay for. Just look at how well the Porsche Taycan is selling, despite its enormous price tag and vastly inferior range when compared to the Model S. The same is true for the Mercedes EQS. Some people are clearly willing to spend more on an electric Mercedes than a Tesla. I think this is important to acknowledge. What is the main problem that is stopping BEV companies from succeeding? Well, it's profit. They don't produce net profits. And companies can only survive so long until they exhaust all their available capital. And after that, well, they need to raise more capital or declare bankruptcy. Raising capital might be difficult if you've not shown a path to profitability, and floating more shares won't raise as much money if your stock price has plummeted, due to investors losing confidence in the success of these companies. As I've mentioned, there are three potential paths to profitability. One is ramping up to volume production enough to hit economies of scale that the OPEX becomes relatively smaller. This is something we are not yet seeing except from Tesla. The second path is getting costs down. The biggest cost is batteries, and we're expecting the price of batteries to get lower over time. Now, although the Chinese are already using a cheap alternative with LFP batteries, the legacy autos are sticking with nickel batteries as they believe they must offer cars with sufficient range, according to their market research. Legacy autos are very marketing oriented, and they likely know their customers well, better than the Chinese EVs would. Therefore, Legacy are taking the approach of offering decent range to their customers. Nickel batteries obviously cost a lot more, but Legacy claim they have a path to get down to $100 per kilowatt hour, which will make a huge difference to them. Then the other way to make a profit is to simply raise prices, which is where we started, how consumers are willing to pay more for legacy brands than Teslas. Well, at least that's what's happening with some brands, but of course there's supply and demand too. I'm sure if Tesla only made as many EVs as Porsche, then equally, Tesla could probably charge similar prices too. But Tesla is going mainstream. There is no arguing that they won't be the biggest EV company in the world, or remain I should say, but perhaps I mean to say the biggest auto company in the world, or at least by sales, as well as actual market capitalization. But like I say, the world would be boring if everyone just drove a Tesla. And some people are loyal customers to certain auto brands, and some others simply don't want to be like everyone else. And some people simply have so much money, they want everyone to know they can spend almost twice as much as a Model S on a Porsche, even though it's that inferior to the Model S. People identify with the cars they own. This means that the brands that Legacy have created seem to still have some value. Also, if these autos aren't going to be able to ramp up to volume production in time, then maybe collectively they might only be able to produce 5 to 10 million cars a year, or maybe fewer, perhaps at a time when the EV market saturates, including the inception of robotaxis. Anyway, like we're saying about nickel batteries, the legacy autos are building their own factories and partnering with the right companies to achieve this, and will get their battery costs down low enough. They don't have to undercut Tesla on price. They have to offer adequate range of around 300 miles, they have to adopt Tesla's FSD, and be able to use Tesla's charging network. And then they have a potentially profitable EV business. And judging by Rivian and Lucid's valuations, these EV businesses could be worth a fortune. Legacy autos are a lot further ahead than those two. And like I say, they're almost likely to pick their best brands and models that can justify a higher price, such as Mercedes, Porsche, Mustang, and F-150. Alternatively, Volkswagen appear to be undercutting Tesla, at least that brand is. Their other brands like the electric Audi GT are trying to hit an even higher price point. They're trying to judge where their brands fit in relative to Tesla's brand and what price their consumers are willing to pay. As a result, the Volkswagens are more basic than a Tesla. The question is though, will their ICE business be too big a liability to take the companies down, which is highly possible, and add to that the additional cost of labour unions and car dealer networks, and that profitability side of things does become more difficult. But if we remove those two elements, and they get their battery prices down, then this could be very profitable. I know we have the cost of advertising that Tesla doesn't have, because the cars simply sell themselves, but in reality it's only about $1,000 per vehicle, perhaps a bit more with electric, but it's not affecting profits as much as car dealers or unions. But Legacy are stuck with these. Unless they can somehow set up a subsidiary for their electric vehicles that removes them, then it's going to be tough. Which is why I think if legacy auto companies do go bankrupt, then selling their electric vehicle business, including battery factories, will be worth a lot more to someone other than legacy autos, if they can extract the unions and car dealerships from it. Either way, the legacy EV business can be profitable. Not everyone likes the design of Teslas, or some people simply like the look of a BMW better. And some of these electric cars that legacy autos bring out do look good. They may not be hitting the same performance or range as a Tesla, but they're still a lot better than the ICE performance figures. And like I say, surely the best companies to buy out these legacy EV businesses would be battery companies, namely the likes of LG, SKI, Panasonic or Samsung, the companies already making the batteries for them. These are serious battery companies and can justify more research and development into improving their battery technology. They also have a profitable business to support any short-term losses. Some people say the Chinese will buy out the legacy auto companies. They generally say it as if they will buy the whole company out, ICE included, which seems ridiculous. These companies will go bankrupt eventually if that is the case. So if the Chinese bought them, they would still go bankrupt, and the Chinese would lose all their investment. It would only be if and when the legacy autos go bankrupt that they would have to sell what they can to pay their creditors. This would be when the EV business can be acquired. I'm just not sure what value the Chinese would add to it. The manufacturing lines are already set up, the battery factories would be set up, and the logistics and processes. Some people think the Chinese would just buy the brands, then they'll just make an electric Cadillac or something at low cost in China, and then US consumers will feel comfortable buying a Chinese EV because of the US badge. But then we're stuck with the low range and performance the Chinese autos offer. Otherwise, the Chinese would have to buy the entire manufacturing plants and battery factories and just run the companies as they are in the US or Mexico, as the case may be. So think that through more on how the Chinese would acquire legacy autos, because as usual, it's never as simple as people think. They just like to throw words around at times to sound clever, and they might say, well, it's what the Chinese did with MG. MG is still making ICE vehicles. It's not the same game. Polestar might be another example, but the manufacturing started in China. They also make hybrids, and they're using nickel-based batteries, which means they're not going to be able to scale up anytime soon. And alright, it's possible that GM does go bankrupt, that some of their trademarks are for sale, and their EV operations are sold separately. Perhaps the Chinese could just buy the Cadillac brand, but if they wanted to make a lot of them, then they would have to use their LFP batteries, which means minimal range, which probably won't be on brand for Cadillac. The big legacy brands just might not carry over to what the Chinese can offer. Anyway, perhaps it needs a whole video dedicated to how the Chinese could buy legacy autos if they did go bankrupt, as people talk about it, but they don't explain how it will happen. They just say Polestar or MG. I think it would be best if the Japanese and Korean battery companies did vertically integrate and buy out the legacy EVs businesses. I would say they can likely do a lot more with those brands when compared to the antiquated systems of ICE autos. The legacy systems need to step out the way and let the technology through without also having to be concerned about cannibalizing their cash cow, i.e. the ICE business. Korea and Japan also have thriving auto industries, so they have the human capital and resources to manufacture locally too. Anyway, I think it would be cool to see some of these legacy brands carry on, and I want Tesla to have competition, and I don't want it to just be from China. And perhaps it might work like this. For example, LG could buy all the US legacy autos. Panasonic could buy all the German ones even. Then they could just pick the best models from each of them with consolidated vehicle types. Perhaps a sedan from BMW, a luxury car from Mercedes, a station wagon from Audi, a compact car from Volkswagen, a sports car from Porsche. And maybe that's it. Rather than dozens of different models they each offer today, this would create better economies of scale. I think I'd be very pleased if this is how it plays out, but they are all still tourists in Tesla's world. Oh right, Tesla too. Elon has actually said he would not rule out purchasing a legacy auto company either. I know you all think that's a bad idea, but he still said it. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.